We're going to jump straight into quite a complex legal situation unfolding in West Bengal. It's all about recruiting primary school teachers.
That's right. We're looking at a recent court development, really, that highlights some real challenges in how these large recruitment drives happen.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Back in September 2022, West Bengal kicked off a process to hire assistant teachers for primary schools.
Yep. And initially, it seems that candidates who were doing a specific teaching diploma, the DLAE, for the 2020-2022 session, they were actually allowed to apply.
Right, even though they hadn't finished yet.
Exactly. They were still pursuing the course when the recruitment started, but then things got, let's say, complicated legally.
Uh-huh. What happened?
Well, first, a court bench that's basically a single judge in the high court, and then a division bench, which is like a panel of judges. They both weighed in.
Yeah.
And they both ruled that these specific candidates, the 2020-2022 group, should actually be excluded from that recruitment process.
Wow, okay. So allowed in, then ruled out. That must have caused some confusion.
You can imagine. So naturally, this didn't end there. The case went higher up.
To the Supreme Court, I assume.
Precisely.
Right.
And on April 4th of this year, 2025, the Supreme Court delivered its judgment. This was in the Soman Paul case.
Okay, the Soman Paul case, and what was the verdict?
The Supreme Court basically said, no, the West Bengal Board of Primary Education must consider the applications from those 2020-2022 DLED candidates. So it reversed the lower court's decisions on that point.
Okay, so that's one group sorted, at least for now. But the court document we're focused on today, WPA 8959 of 2025, brings in another set of people, right? Ajmal Islam and others.
Exactly. This is where it gets layered. These new petitioners, Ajmal Islam and the others in this current case, they are also teachers who applied in that same 2022 process.
But their situation is different.
Yes. They actually completed their DLED qualification before 2020. So they were fully qualified well before the recruitment even started, unlike the Soman Paul group.
Ah, I see. So what's their grievance then?
Their complaint is that when the board filled, I think it was 900 and 533 posts initially, they weren't considered or appointed.
Even though they were qualified earlier.
Right. And they point out that other candidates who they say were similarly situated did get appointed, so they feel they were unfairly overlooked.
And did they try to join that Supreme Court case, the Soman Paul one?
They did. They applied to be included, but the Supreme Court dismissed their application, however, and this is crucial.
Okay.
The Supreme Court, in its April 4th judgment, specifically in paragraph 34, noted their dismissal, but explicitly gave them permission, liberty, they called it, to pursue other legal remedies if they wanted to.
Got it. So the Supreme Court didn't rule on their specific issue, but left the door open for them to file a separate case.
Exactly. And that's precisely what they've done with this current writ petition, WPA 859 of 2025. They're using that permission.
Makes sense. So what are they asking for now in this new petition?
They're essentially asking the High Court to direct the board to consider their candidatures now alongside the 2020-2022 group that the Supreme Court said must be considered.
So sort of saying, if you're looking at them, you absolutely need to look at us too, especially since we were qualified even earlier.
That's the gist of it, yes. They want a fair shot, basically, in light of the Supreme Court's intervention for the other group.
And how has the West Bengal Board of Primary Education responded to this new petition?
Well, so far, not definitively. The lawyer representing the board asked the court for some time. They need to get instructions, figure out the board's stance.
Instructions on what specifically?
On how they plan to deal with any remaining vacancies from that 2022 process and whether they will now consider these petitioners, the pre-2020 qualified group.
Right. So everything's a bit up in the air for these candidates at the moment.
Very much so. It's a waiting game.
Is there a next step scheduled? A deadline?
Yes. The court has set the next hearing date for this specific case, WPA 8959 of 2025, for June 17th, 2025.
June 17th. Okay, so we might get more clarity, though.
Hopefully. That's likely when the board will have to state its position.
So just to recap this complex situation, we had a recruitment drive, a group initially allowed, then disallowed, then allowed again by the Supreme Court.
The 2020-22 DLED students, yeah.
Yeah. And now we have another group, qualified even earlier, who feel they were bypassed and are now seeking consideration based on, partly, the Supreme Court's ruling for the first group.
That sums it up pretty well. It's a real tangle of timelines, qualifications, and legal interpretations. The board's decision now is key.
Absolutely. It really makes you think, doesn't it? When you have these huge public sector recruitments with so many candidates and these kinds of legal challenges popping up, what does this whole situation really tell us about the difficulty of ensuring fairness and transparency for everyone who's eligible and trying to get these important jobs? Something definitely worth mulling over.
Indeed. It shows just how intricate these processes can become.